Welcome to the SAFeTY Chronicles, exploring how to keep people and pets safe from the cycle of interpersonal violence. I am your host, Allie Phillips, founder and CEO of Sheltering Animals and Families Together, the SAFeTY Program, a nonprofit organization working with domestic violence shelters to eliminate the pet housing barrier to safety. As the founder, I have led the global movement in helping domestic violence shelters create on-site pet housing while elevating the criminal justice response to how animal abuse links to crimes against people. I am a former prosecuting attorney, internationally recognized legal expert and public speaker, award-winning author, and advocate for protecting vulnerable victims. In this podcast, we will explore how and why animals are harmed in the cycle of family violence and the human-animal bond that keeps victims in harm's way with their pets. Guest speakers and I will share strategies for shelters and professionals working to safeguard survivors, why pet-inclusive sheltering is life-saving, and safety tips for those who need help. None of the content will be graphic. If you are in harm's way, please contact your nearest domestic violence shelter or call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode. And I got my cat Unicorn here and I'm ready to get started. So I want to talk about a question that I get from a lot of people in the community, a lot of people who love animals, a lot of people who really want to help people who have animals. And the question is, why don't all domestic violence shelters accept pets on site? That's a good question. So let's unpack that. So this question actually comes out of the human-animal bond, which I talked about in episode 4. And for anyone who loves their companion animals, they cannot fathom leaving them behind in a disaster or in a situation where they have to evacuate for safety, like domestic violence. But that can only happen if you have a pet-inclusive safe place to go to. If you can go into pet-safe housing, that's fantastic. If you can go to a pet-friendly hotel, that's great. But for many, that is not an option. And this is why the domestic violence sheltering system is such a beneficial system, not only here in the US, but worldwide. So when I teach at conferences or have consultations with shelters, I aim to help them understand that 70% of homes, at least here in the US, at least 70% have a pet. So of the community members they have who may need their services, 70% of them have pets. And so they have a need for safe housing with their pet. And a lot of people do not want to be separated. So I hear a variety of responses from shelters as to why they don't take pets. And I want to share these to help you understand, either as somebody who works in a shelter or as a community member who wants to have a safety shelter in your community. Now, I answer all of these and more in the SAFeTY Startup Manual, which is a free resource to domestic violence shelters. So if you know somebody at a domestic violence shelter, please go into the notes below and send them the link so that they can request the manual. Because, the more we understand the dynamics of a domestic violence shelter, the more we can all help and support them to welcome pets. So I'm going to go through a variety of responses that I get from shelters and just give you a very brief explanation of how I walk them through it to get to the other side where they can house pets on site. Because right now we've got about, 325 pet-friendly shelters in 6 countries and 47 states. So it can be done, okay? So one that I hear is, we don't have the money to do this. Now, in the manual, I talk about how there is an option that requires no money. Okay, it can just be set up without any money. But at the same point, there is a large amount of money available to shelters through federal funds, through corporate and community grants, from personal donations, from going onto social media with very specific cases and requesting help. And what we do at the SAFeTY program is we help the shelters engage their community, because that is what creates sustainability. Grants, not so much. Grants are a great way to get started. So we have all the resources available to them. In fact, I have a listing on the safetyprogram.org website of fundraising options. The second response that I get is, we don't have the space. So I offer to either look at photos or videos, or if I can do an on-site visit, I will do that. Because as an outsider, I can see things that maybe they overlook. I fully realize the shelter staff is just in the weeds of that business all day long. I have a fresh perspective. And so when I look at photos and videos, I can see where animals can fit. And I have done this so many times with shelters, and they've come back and said, oh, wow, like we never thought that utility room or that storage room that was just full of junk that we needed to get rid of, we didn't think that we could use it. And now it's their indoor pet shelter. You know, pets don't need luxury. They just want to be safe, and they want to be with their family. And so the manual actually offers them a variety of different housing options, as well as, you know, photos and all the ways that shelters have been so creative. The third reason I hear is, we don't have the staff to oversee the program. Now, this one is, all of these are easy to overcome. Let me say that. This one is probably the trickiest, because on behalf of the SAFeTY program, I can't do anything to help with staffing at shelters. What I can do them is help them work around it. And it just requires buy-in from the whole staff, so that this doesn't fall on one person. And I talk to them about opening the doors to their animal shelter or animal rescue partner. You know, for example, Sojourner Shelter in Phoenix does this. They have an outside animal rescue partner that comes in and does all the work on behalf of the animals, cleans the cages, makes sure that they're fed, you know, does all the enrichment. So that's a possibility. But they can also go out and get a grant specifically to fund a person full-time or part-time to do this. The URI shelter in New York City, they get grant money to pay for full-time staff to coordinate this program. Every shelter is different. Some are very small, some are very large. I help brainstorm the options so that they can actually do this, but it really doesn't take a whole lot of oversight. And again, it just depends on the size of the shelter. Now, the fourth reason that I hear is, we are worried about allergies. I get it. I am allergic to cats. I have 3 cats, but I know how to manage it. And so, you know, I guide them through the housing options that can help to reduce allergens. I talk to them about having hard floors. They're so much easier to clean up in between residents. But I even know shelters that have carpeting, and they still don't have a problem with pets in the room. I talk to them about putting, you know, air purifying filters in the air ducts, or getting an air purifier in the room. But there's other housing options that can isolate any potential allergens. So again, this is something that can be solved for. The fifth reason I hear is, we are worried about pet noises. So I have found that when pets are separated from their families and they are put in an indoor kennel or an outdoor kennel without their family, they tend to be more vocal. So this is where I talk to the shelters about getting the pets back in the room with their owners and with their family, because that can actually quiet a pet who is vocal because they are stressed and they are confused and they are concerned. Now, the sixth option I hear is, we are worried about injuries caused by pets, or people who are afraid of pets. So there is a policy in the SAFeTY program that the owner takes care of their pet. It really shouldn't fall on the shelter staff unless you specifically hire a trained professional, but it should be the owner taking care of the pet, scooping the litter box, walking the dog, and no one touches that animal. So when they're taking their dog out to walk, people in the shelter who are residents are not coming and loving all over that dog or that cat, because that's when a bite or a scratch can happen. So as long as shelters follows this policy, it works great. It virtually eliminates any injury that could be caused by a pet that's scared or has been abused and is reactive. The seventh reason I hear is we are worried about the safety aspect of having pets on site. What if somebody breaks into an outdoor kennel or, the play area outside? What if the abuser finds out where the shelter is at, or the shelter is at a public location and they just show up and they try to steal their dog or cat or other animal? Here's the thing. I talked to them about getting security, getting padlocks, getting cameras, getting that security in place. And if a dog has to be walked off the property, whatever the protocol is for a resident to leave and go to school or go to work, put those protocols in place for walking the dog. So, this is where each shelter is specific, and I need to know what their shelter setup is, and then we can brainstorm solutions. Because to all of these, there's a solution. I have yet to encounter an issue that I haven't been able to find a solution for. All right, number 8. The shelters are worried about pets being left behind. So there is a form that comes with the Safety Startup Manual where a resident at intake can sign a form. It's up to the shelter, but it's there. If you want that resident to sign a form that indicates if they leave and do not take their pet and do not make prior arrangements to keep the pet there, then that pet is immediately relinquished and can be placed for adoption with the animal shelter partner. So again, that can be solved for. Worry number 9. We are worried about the abuser seeking to reclaim the pet, showing up at the shelter, causing problems, demanding to take their pet. So I guide the shelters in how to advise a resident about bringing paperwork regarding the animals, whether it's adoption or sale paperwork, veterinary receipts, anything that has the resident's name associated with that animal. So there's all sorts of ways that we can work around that. And then number 10, what if there are objections from staff or other residents? And this is where I suggest that they start educating the staff and the residents on how pets are pawns in this cycle of domestic violence, how they can be targeted, and help them understand that this is a life-saving program. We would never ask a domestic violence survivor to leave their children behind, and we should never ask them to leave a beloved pet behind. But having this conversation may also reveal if the objector had a traumatic experience with an animal. Maybe, they were injured by an animal, or maybe they saw an animal being abused, and this is an opportunity for healing and to talk about it. So we are here to help a shelter overcome any concerns and to solve for any concerns that they have, because the more safety shelters we have, the safer families will be, the safer their pets will be, and the safer communities will be. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Give me a thumbs up and a like below if you like it, and feel free to comment. We always appreciate feedback. All right, take care. Thanks for being here.